this is an interesting show of really great contrasts. Barbara Chase-Riboud and Alberto Giacometti. It's a small show at the Museum of Modern Art, basically consisting of about 8 Giacomettis. I think 5 of them have never been seen in the United States. They're plasters that he did. And then a selection of Barbara Chase-Riboud's sculptures, ranging from the first piece that she cast, which was, I think, in 1958, up to work that is very recent. And there's a sensuous, noble black monument, bronze and braided fabric in Barbara Chase-Riboud's work, where the sinuous sculptures of white plaster painted kind of human image condensed to kind of the slimmest essence is what we're looking at with the sculptures from Giacometti. The play between the two of them, there's a kind of monumentality to the Riboud work, and this slim, quivering essence with Giacometti. It's interesting to see them play off of each other. Let me move us to here, and this gives you some idea of what's in the show. There are a number of other pieces that are strewn out across the floor, but these are the Giacomettis that are in the show, and then there's some other pieces by Chase-Riboud in other parts of the gallery. But you can see what I mean. There's a great contrast. These black monumental pieces by her and his white plasters. Very interesting. There's kind of the observational aspect, the obsessive revisioning in that characterize Giacometti, and this kind of architectonic, organic shape, monumental kind of tribute pieces that Riboud is working on. They met in 1960. So I'm gonna move on to, oh, okay. What is going on? Uh-oh. I'm not seeing.
I'm just saying, Larry,
Yes.
yesterday's program, we had to start 15 minutes late because there was so much problems. Seems something is going on with Verizon in the stratosphere.
Oh boy.
And I don't know what's happening. You could try see what else you could do.
Let me try.
If anybody was here for the program Raptors for Rookies, which was an excellent program. We had like 65 to 70, maybe 70 people, I don't remember, people coming. And Anne Swaim, who many of you might know from the Sawmill River Audubon, and really a computer whiz, could not get the computer to pull together.
What
Took
the
her
heck is going
15
on?
minutes. I don't know.
Well, this is interesting. Okay.
This is what she had.
Let me stop sharing.
And then she said
again.
she found out there was something wrong with Verizon. Do you have, I guess you have Verizon as your carrier?
No.
Well, then that blows my
Share.
theory.
Are you seeing this on
Yes,
screen
I
right
am.
now?
Yes,
You
I'm
are.
seeing the first,
Okay. So you know what? This is what we're going to go with because I don't want to go to full screen because it doesn't seem to be working. So we're going to go here and look at this. What
It's
the
not
heck
working.
is going on? We have a
Yet I
problem.
see it on the side.
Yes, we see it on the side, but it's
I
not
do.
coming up on the. Wow,
I
this
don't know.
is weird. Okay, none of them. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm staying home. 2 out of 2 programs is not looking well for me.
Let me stop share again.
Well, I wish you could have all seen this Raptors for Rookies while he's trying to figure something out. Although we couldn't videotape it when it finally started, it was an amazing program about raptors are birds that prey on animals. So something from an eagle to a owl, kestrels, just all sorts of, and you recognize them by their beak, because their beak, as she said, you hold your hand like this and you make a with your finger, because that's the way that beak is. And they have talons. And she said, even though it's sometimes hard to watch a bird attack a let's say even another bird, because they do eat other birds. It's just, that's the way it is. And she showed pictures and images of all this. It was, I'm sorry, it was an excellent program. And if anyone is watching, she gave a lot of handouts, and I could send you the handout if you're interested in looking at birds. She also has this handout, how to recognize birds in the sky if you're looking at them. So she has shadow pictures of them, and you'd be able to recognize a red-tailed hawk from an eagle, which is kind of obvious, but you never know. All these amazing birds. So if you're interested, send me an email and put in the subject title, Raptors Handout. So it's RAPTORS handout. And I will send you the handout, which was just amazing.
Okay.
I see it. I see it. What happened? Don't ask. I'm not asking.
I do not know. I just reloaded the thing in here and we're ready to roll. Okay.
Well, that's what she had to
All
do.
right.
She went off about 5 times though, and she spent a lot
Yeah.
of time. We're not that
Okay.
late compared to yesterday.
Yes. Okay. So I will do the best I can to push us through this. In 1961, at age 22, the American artist Barbara Chase-Riboud moved to Paris from Philadelphia. The following year, she visited the renowned Swiss sculptor Alberto Giacometti, who had moved to the French capital 40 years earlier. Seeing the older artists at work in his studio was an awe-inspiring experience. Everything was covered with plaster. The walls, the floors, the ceiling. She has recalled, and the first I saw him, he himself was entirely white, covered with white plaster. Inspired by that encounter, this exhibition brings together the works of these two expatriate sculptors who both looked to the past in order to reimagine the art of their time, and follows Chase-Riboud's practice from that moment in Paris to the present. While Giacometti often started with clay, modeling his works by hand before casting them in plaster, Chase-Riboud, who was also an acclaimed poet and novelist, favors the ancient lost wax casting method for her bronzes. She combines metal with knotted and braided wool, silk, and other fibers. In her work, the wool she has explained, that becomes the strong element, while the bronze paradoxically appears soft. This display brings together a large bronze and a group of plaster sculptures by Giacometti, 5 of which from the landmark Women of Venice, excuse me, with works from across Chase-Riboud's 7-decade career. From her signature commemorative sculptures to her monumental projects for public spaces, the exhibition traces the development and ambitious scope of her practice, shaped by her travels across Europe, Africa, and Asia, and her lifelong fascination with ancient cultures. So, I am going to expand this out a bit because there's really a very limited number of pieces in the show, but basically what it comes down to is there is this Egyptian, African, archaic Greek element that they share, really. There's and I will show you examples of how this works, but surrealism and modernism are all ingredients in the work of both the artists. And you can see here, you know, the differences between them, the kind of totem-like quality in the Chase-Riboud pieces and the frenetic working of the clay of the surface by Giacometti. Okay, and you know, Giacometti's work, there's this sense of movement frozen in time. And you know, one of the things that correlation between the Egyptian and the Giacometti's is this business of verticality and horizontality, the directional walking man recalls this kind of Egyptian striding figure. Again, with the standing women, with Giacometti, this kind of attenuated hourglass shape of the standing woman reflects the Egyptian and the archaic Greek figures. And let me go here, and you see these pieces from the Aegean area, and you get the simplification, but there's also that essential form that's there. And then there's a set of masks that I pulled up, which are the two on the two ends, in the middle and on the right are both African masks, and the one in the middle is from Modigliani. Modigliani was definitely, you know, influenced by the African masks, but so was Picasso and Matisse in his own way. A lot of modernists were very much taken with the African masks and African sculpture. These are early Giacometti's. Basically, he went through a surrealist period in the mid-20s to 1934 or so. And you can see in these the kind of relationship to African sculpture. He was part of the surrealist group, André Masson, who was one of the deans of the group. You know, he was definitely included in that group at that time. When Giacometti turned from these kind of surrealist, dreamlike images and back to the figure, they excommunicated him from the surrealist plan. So these are three surrealist pieces by Giacometti, portraits of his father and his mother, and there's a lot of them in the series. And then you see the Aegean head, the archaic Greek sculpture head that has a you know, really a kind of direct correlation to the simplification that's going on. Now, Giacometti was academically trained. He started drawing and painting when he was a child, and went to the academy. Let's see, where did he go? Which one was he in? He went to the School of the Arts, School of Fine Arts in Geneva. His father was an artist. One of his brothers, a furniture designer and sculptor. So there was a lot of support and exposure in his family. Okay. There's a charm to these pieces that is really, you know, I love them when I found them. I hadn't seen these before. Okay. Again, Brancusi, the simplification of form and all that. This was 1912. These were, you know, 27. So there was precedent already out there for this kind of abstracted simplification. And again, the 1918 sculpture, this is going to relate to Riboud also. Okay, these are a couple of Giacometti's high kind of surrealist pieces. And here you see the kind of, this is from 1932, the woman with her throat cut. This is, you know, very strange surrealist shapes. Chase-Riboud, this piece, this Adam and Eve, I believe was her first cast bronze. And you can see the, you know, the kind of surrealist influences in that. Now, you know, looking at this piece and remembering the time that was taking place, 1958, we were still in the peak of the Cold War, the nuclear threat was kind of ever present. So there's also the business of the post-war phenomena in Europe helped formulate some of Giacometti's figurative pieces, and a number of other representational artists were very influenced by the devastation of the war. So, you know, I'm just saying there were things in the air at the time, radioactive things. Okay. So this is from 1963. Now, one of the things that I want to go back to here for a moment is talking about Chase-Riboud's background. I'll give a little fleshing out of who she was and where she's coming from. She was born in 1939. She's a visual artist, sculptor, best-selling novelist, and award-winning poet. Established as a sculptor and poet, she won widespread recognition as an author for her novel Sally Hemings in 1979, which really was about the relationship between Sally Hemings and Jefferson. It was a fictional story, but it was very groundbreaking at the time, and with it came kind of international success. Actually, CBS was going to do a mini series on it, but there were a group of historians that kind of stepped in and questioned the reality of that relationship. Now we have DNA evidence and all that, and know for sure that there was that the descendants of Sally Hemings were Jefferson's children. But interesting stuff. I mean, and she also wrote another book, which was the basis for the film Amistad by Spielberg, and she was not given credit by the screenwriter for having come up with this story. She ended up in a lawsuit with the company and won a settlement of $10 million. Interesting stuff. Anyway, she grew up in Philadelphia, was a child of a historiology technician. I don't know what exactly that means. And her father was a contractor. She started studying art at 8 years old, and went to Tyler, which is a wonderful school in Philadelphia. Graduated from there, won a John Hayes Whitney Fellowship to study at the American Academy in Rome. And during that time, she traveled to Egypt and discovered non-European art. In 1960, she completed an MFA at Yale University School of Design and Architecture. She was actually the first African-American woman to receive an MFA from Yale. So I'm just trying to put her in context. I really knew nothing about her before seeing the show, so she was a real discovery. I knew about the Sally Hemings book and all that, but didn't associate it with her. Really fascinating stuff. So, all right, I'm going to keep moving. Walking Angel, 1962. Again, her use of and interest in the kind of classical sculpture. One of the things that she came to was that she really wanted to go more deeply into abstraction, and these pieces were tied to representation by the feet. And she wanted to find some way to move beyond the representational into another way of grounding the pieces. You know, the feet were funky, but they were grounding her work in figuration, just as the feet on the Giacomettis are these large grounding things, while the body seemed to dissolve into the ether. Uh, so she working with a friend, Andrea, I'm not sure how to Chenier. Um, she integrated fabric, thread, weaving wool, silk, and other kinds of coarse thread in knots and braidings into her bronzes. And this was the skirt that covered the feet. She really left figuration behind and went into a more monumental scale. Cleopatra's Cape. So at the time, there's kind of this obvious implicit human use or human presence without resorting to a figurative element. There's also an interesting relationship to what was going on in the late 60s, early 70s. Minimalism was very much in vogue. Donald Judd and these large volumetric, simplified, abstract shapes. These pieces are anything but minimal. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here and show you some of these bronze plates that she was casting and tying together to create the cape. Beautiful shapes and this grid-like pattern. There is that sort of grid pattern which unifies the piece, but also gives it this unique texture. Each square, is its own unique piece, making this anything but minimal. So again, the mixture of bronze and material, very interesting pieces. And these are in the show. And this is El Anatsui, who pursues a very similar quilt-like pattern in his work. This contemporary artist uses recycled materials and community engagement to create his installations. There was one, a huge one, down at the Highline sculpture installation projects. And there's also one in the Metropolitan. There's a number of them around. So using all kinds of recycled plastic and bottle caps and all kinds of junk, he creates these beautiful cascading pieces. And I felt like there was really a relationship between this and Barbara Chase-Riboud's work. This is 20 years later. Actually, this piece was from 1973, and this is from 1994. So multicolored bronze plaques over oak. It's not a gigantic piece. but very much, you know, um, Cleopatra again, where this world's recognition of other ways of approaching art and using that as the jumping off point for her work. Okay, and here she is, sitting in front of her piece that's at the Museum of Modern Art now. And when it was first installed, it had a different name, but All That Rises Must Converge, Black. And you know, you see this really innovative way of using these different mediums and mixing them together, and you know, this business of braiding, of hair, of design and pattern. Really interesting. Ah, again, this kind of reference to Egyptian kind of bird god reading or connecting to some cryptic hieroglyphic element in the plaque. Woman's Monument. Okay. The Musica series from 1997 till now, she's still working with this series. Music and dance are kind of integrated. They're instruments and they're dancers at the same time. There's and then I came up with this Greek musician. I found this at the Metropolitan Museum, and I thought, wow, that shape is very familiar. So I you know, I think she was definitely some of these pieces she refers to different contemporary dancers. I don't have all the names of the different pieces that are here. And this installation is actually not in the show at the Museum of Modern Art. This was part of a show that was at Serpentine Gallery, I believe, in London. Okay. And this Malcolm X series, they are tribute pieces more than they are portraits. They are monumental tributes to him as a leading character and force. The fascinating play between the gestural quality of the knotted fabric and the smooth geometric kind of semi-organic bronze castings are really interesting to me. The interaction of those materials and what they do. Beautiful pieces, very beautiful pieces. So I'm not sure how much time we have. I don't want to stretch this too far, but I couldn't leave Giacometti. Okay, I couldn't leave Giacometti without entering into his paintings, because from the the mid-40s till the end of his life, he worked back and forth between his paintings and his sculpture. And it really is a transition from the interior Giacometti studio. His innovation as a painter, for me, is as important as his work as a sculptor. This kind of searching line, trying to define space, and I'll go on to this, and basically, he looked long and hard at Cézanne. The effort to see structure, see what's before our eyes moment to moment, and to pursue that kind of fleeting experience is something Cézanne worked with in his work. And, basically what's happening is moment by moment, you're seeing things differently. You're thinking about things differently. Your eyes move slightly from position to position. And if you're trying to capture the present moment in a experience, it is going to have to contain that sense of transitoriness in a way. So one of the things that happens in Cézanne is these multiple points of view are contained in these pieces, and you see that kind of quivering line in there in the Cézanne still life. And Giacometti picked up on that and wanted to enter into that space of that unknowability of the presence, that each moment is a different experience, and trying to capture that in a painting means that you need to let go of the past. The moment before is gone, and this present moment is what you're painting. So that's something that's going on in these pieces, and I wanted to explore that a little more. So here is landscape at Stampa. This was the small village where Giacometti grew up, and he returned to his parents' home. It is, from my understanding, kind of vertiginously surrounded by these mountains. So it's kind of, almost like the cave-like quality of his studio is echoed in this landscape. One of the things I wanted to look at is the relationship, this kind of compulsively searching for the architectonic definition of the landscape, and then obliterating it at the same time, painting it and painting it out. You can see in this late, beautiful Mount Saint-Victoire by Cézanne, the hovering definition of space. It's without that kind of ferocity that's going on, that panic that's going on with Giacometti trying to catch the thing before it goes away. The openness of the Cézanne still has that kind of sense of movement, of moving planes, of shifting point of view. Okay. So again, in this lovely, actually, drawing, searching for the underlying forms in this Cézanne, this drawing inside the book, Giacometti compulsively drew. He drew on tables, he drew on tablecloths, he drew on books, he drew wherever he was on whatever was in front of him. You know, he would go into a cafe and sit for a coffee, and he'd scribble away on the menu. So it is a really important part of who he was as an artist. There's an integrity to it and a sense of exasperation for him. Okay. And always the portraits, painting in, painting it out, start again. This kind of existential confrontation of the canvas and the, you know, trying to see the form in front of him, trying to see the figure and see it moment by moment. Okay. This is the James Lord portrait, which was done in 1964. So this is very late in Giacometti's career. Giacometti died in 66. James Lord was a writer, and I don't know if he's still alive. He may be. And he wrote several books on Giacometti's drawings, but he also wrote this book, which was a Giacometti portrait, which the Stanley Tucci based his, I believe it's Painting a Portrait. I can't remember what the name of it exactly is, but Stanley Tucci did a film about the experience that James Lord had with Giacometti in this experience. So he sat for him, and it was supposedly only going to be 2 or 3 sittings. It stretched out to a total of 18. In fact, the intense sessions wore on for the best part of 3 weeks, as Giacometti fussed and raged, scraped and repainted, repeatedly reworking Lord's features on the canvas. The sittings, 18 of them in total, ended only after an exasperated Lord imposed a final deadline by leaving the country. Each sitting started with Giacometti always said, it's helpless. I don't know why I'm even trying. It's impossible.
By the way, James Lord did die. He died in 2009.
He died in 2009. Okay.
Yeah. But he wrote the critically acclaimed biography of Giacometti.
Oh, it is this book. I've read it about 4 times in my student years and over the years. It is a quintessential book on the experience of observation and the real anguish that Giacometti went through trying to capture what he saw before him. Caroline, during the last 5 years of his life, Caroline was his model and lover. Again, this searching, redefining, revising the same nervous energy. You know, he would paint it in, he would paint it out and come back again. And he would say, there's a square inch of this that's working. I'm going to paint the rest of it out and enter through that. And these beautiful atmospheric drawings, this hovering texture and defined space by these rectangles. It's an image of his studio again. And here is Diego, his brother, who actually was his studio assistant, but also sat for him. again and again over the years. You know, it's Diego seated 1948. The drawings on the right are from 1962. The bust itself, I believe, is from the probably the late 50s, early 60s. But you can see the likeness that's there. And this is Annette, Giacometti's long-suffering wife, who stuck with him through all the lovers and the encounters, sat for him time and time again. They had no children. And Giacometti, by the mid-50s, was an acknowledged master and was earning phenomenal amounts of money for his work. He would take the money and stuff it underneath his mattress, didn't put it into banks, lived in this hovel of a studio, slept there, bought an apartment for Annette to live in, but he never went there. He stayed in his studio slash apartment among the rubble, and was convinced that if he left it, he would lose his edge. And here's the studio. Actually, over in the right-hand corner, you can see it covered with newspapers and things. That's his bed. And, you know, in the middle of this, you know, just rubble, he would live and paint and work, sculpt. And the painting on the right is, again, another studio interior. And I'm going to leave you with these beautiful, beautiful drawings. Now, unfortunately, there are not any of these drawings or paintings in this show, though they do have them in the collection at the Museum of Modern Art, so you can find a painting out in their collection. But these are not up in this show. I just could not cover Giacometti without at least giving you some of the infectious drive that I feel from these pieces. So there's a talk on YouTube, the surrealist expressionist, the artist, Alberto Giacometti. So you can just kind of like Google search that one and come up with that. And then there's also a number of talks by Barbara Chase-Riboud. And next 2 weeks from now, I'm actually going to explore the archaic Greek collection that's at the Metropolitan. So this could be a really kind of different approach to things for us.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to mention that Chase-Riboud, the book that she wrote that was so outstanding and she became an international success with, was Sally
Yes.
Hemings.
Yes.
You know, Thomas Jefferson's friend.
Yes.
So, yeah. So this is
they bore
international-
6 children together, and
Yeah.
the generations down, they check the DNA. So
Yeah, that's how they
know.
knew.
They
Yeah,
know.
they did check the DNA. They said there's not even anyone, the descendants of Jefferson Hemings is now widely accepted by historians as fact, including those who objected before. So
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, she wrote that book and she won
Yep.
wide acclaim. So It's all good. Well, thank you, Larry.
Okay,
I hope you all come. I hope you can come. You know, the sky doesn't look so bad right now. So I
Yeah,
hope we
who
see you
knows?
tonight and maybe next Thursday, next Friday. And don't forget that Thursday we have Gotta Dance, which is film clips about the 1930s and up dance routines from the musicals. Okay. See you then. Bye, everyone.
Great, bye.